Anxious attachment doesn't look like clinginess. It looks like checking your phone for the 14th time. Not because you're obsessed, but because the silence feels like something is wrong. Ever wonder why you can know for certain that the silence means nothing and still not be able to stop checking? Today, I'll explain exactly what's happening in your brain, like you're 5 years old. By the end of this video, you'll understand why that happens and why it has nothing to do with how mature you are. You'll also learn what's actually running the show underneath all of it. So you sent the text, and maybe it was a little vulnerable. Maybe it was just a normal message. Hey, are we still on for Saturday? Something low stakes. And they haven't responded. It's been 2 hours, 2 hours and 40 minutes. You've opened the conversation to see if they're active, and they were active 40 minutes ago. So now you're composing a follow-up in your head. It sounds effortlessly casual, but it requires 19 drafts. You know this is a lot, and that knowledge does exactly nothing. You've also checked your sent message twice to make sure it didn't come across wrong. And somewhere between the third and fourth reread, you started analyzing punctuation you didn't even consciously choose. So what is actually happening inside your brain right now? Here's what most people assume. Anxious attachment is a personality thing. It's a maturity thing, something you outgrow, or fix, or meditate away. The story goes, some people are secure, some people are anxious, and the anxious ones just need to work on themselves more. All of that is wrong. Your brain has an attachment system, not a metaphor, but actual wiring. Built in infancy, when your brain was running one calculation on a loop, is the person who keeps me alive nearby or not? The whole program was just that simple. Caregiver close means safe. Caregiver gone means fire the alarm and do whatever it takes to get them back. That system doesn't retire or upgrade over time. It doesn't check in at 32 and say, you've got a job and an apartment, we can probably stand down. It runs in the background constantly. And it cannot tell the difference between an infant whose mother left the room and an adult waiting on a text from someone they've been dating for 3 months. Same alarm, same urgency, completely different threat. But here's where it gets more interesting. Not everyone's alarm is calibrated the same way. If you grew up with a caregiver who was inconsistent, sometimes warm, sometimes distracted, sometimes present, and then suddenly not, your brain learned something very specific. It learned that connection is available, but not reliable. And so, it turned up the sensitivity. It started scanning earlier, harder, more frequently, because the cost of missing a warning sign was too high. Your brain is not overly sensitive. It's correctly calibrated for the environment it grew up in. The problem is that environment no longer exists, but the calibration stayed. What makes this even more difficult to untangle is that the calibration doesn't feel like a setting you chose. It feels like reality. When your nervous system has spent years treating uncertainty as danger, it doesn't present that interpretation as a bias. It presents it as fact. The anxiety doesn't say, I am reacting disproportionately to available information. It says, something is wrong, and you already know it. That gap between what is actually happening and what the nervous system insists is happening is where so much confusion and self-blame lives. Understanding that the feeling is real even when the threat isn't is one of the most disorienting and important distinctions you can make. So now you're an adult with an expertly tuned early warning system pointed at text message response times. Your threat detector sends a signal. They haven't responded. This is a deviation from expected patterns. Deviations have historically meant a problem. Begin threat assessment. Do not rest until you have more information. Your rational brain says, it's been 2 hours. People get busy. This is fine. The attachment system says, we are not doing fine. We are gathering data. And the attachment system is faster. It fires in milliseconds. By the time logic shows up to the conversation, the anxiety is already running. Your amygdala cannot tell the difference between a lion and a 2-hour text delay. It does not care that you're safe. It is not taking questions. But wait, here's the part that makes the whole thing worse. Dude, what do? You try to fix it. You send the casual follow-up. You find a reason to check the conversation again. You put your phone down, pick it up 30 seconds later, and tell yourself that one doesn't count. And sometimes, it works. They respond. The alarm stops. The relief is immediate and enormous. Except, your brain just learned something. It learned that the behavior, the checking, the reaching out, produced the relief. So the next time the alarm fires, it fires a little faster, a little louder, because last time, that's what solved it. This is the feedback loop nobody tells you about. The thing that calms the anxiety short-term is the exact thing that reinforces the pattern long-term. You're not weak. You accidentally trained your brain to be more anxious by doing the thing that made you feel better. Your brain classified silence as a threat and initiated full monitoring protocol. And it gets even more specific than that. Anxiously attached people don't just worry more, they worry differently. Research shows that anxious attachment comes with hypervigilance to relationship cues. Tone of voice, response time, word choice, the number of exclamation points in a message compared to last week. They notice things securely attached people genuinely miss, not because they're paranoid, but because their threat detector runs at a frequency that picks up signals others don't register. The anxiously attached brain is a relationship radar, exquisitely sensitive. Incredibly accurate at detecting real shifts in mood and emotional distance. The problem is, it also picks up noise. And it treats noise like signal. A short reply that just means they're tired gets read as withdrawal. A canceled plan becomes evidence of fading interest. A response without a question at the end feels like the conversation being closed off. The brain is looking so hard for signs of what it fears that it finds them everywhere, even when they're not there. And the painful irony is that the more you search for reassurance in those signals, the more ambiguous everything starts to look. Here's the plot twist. You might have spent years thinking anxious attachment means you need too much, that you're too much, that a secure person would need less. But what the research actually shows is that anxious attachment isn't about wanting more than other people. It's about tolerating uncertainty less, because uncertainty, for this nervous system, doesn't feel neutral. It feels like the beginning of something bad. Secure people can sit with, "I don't know where this is going," and feel mostly okay. Your brain sits with the same uncertainty and experiences it as a low-level emergency. Not because you're dramatic, because your nervous system learned, very early, very thoroughly, that uncertainty tends to end in loss. It's not neediness. It's a survival response to ambiguity. So here's where we come back to the phone. You're still holding it, 2 hours and 47 minutes in. And now you know what's actually happening. Your attachment system, tuned in early childhood, is running a threat audit on a normal Tuesday afternoon. It doesn't know it's 2025. It doesn't know this person is probably just in a meeting. It knows silence has historically been a problem. And it is doing its job. That is not a character flaw. That is wiring. The most anxiously attached people aren't broken. They're people who loved someone inconsistent. Who showed up fully for connections that couldn't hold that? Who taught their nervous system, through no fault of their own, that love is something you have to work very hard not to lose? That's not a broken person. That's a person who learned the wrong lesson from the right instinct. The one thing that actually changes it isn't suppressing the anxiety or forcing yourself to wait. It's building enough repeated experience of, the alarm fired, I waited, nothing bad happened. That's what slowly teaches the nervous system to expect something different. Not a 10-step framework, just enough evidence, enough times, that your brain eventually files a new case study. Sometimes silence is just silence. Sometimes the person was just busy. Sometimes they come back, and nothing was wrong at all. It doesn't happen fast, but it does happen. So here's where the loop closes. Remember checking your phone for the 14th time? That wasn't weakness. That wasn't drama. That was an infant-era alarm running inside an adult brain, doing exactly what it was built to do in a world it wasn't built for. You now see it differently. Not broken, just calibrated for somewhere you no longer live. And the next time the alarm fires, because it will, the question isn't, why am I like this? It's, what did my nervous system learn, and is it still true? Drop it in the comments.